Independent TD Michael McNamara, who has come from the Oireachtas, from the Dáil, where he has just voted, where I believe all but one of the opposition voted against the government's proposals. Why did you vote against?
I voted against them simply because they're discriminatory. They're something that we were assured would never come to pass. Again, we're out of kilter with the rest of Europe as we were throughout last summer. I believe the fact that Ireland was so restricted last summer was one of the measures that impacted upon the Christmas reopening. I don't think there'd be the same desire to, have parties at Christmas as there was had we been like the rest of Europe and allowed people a degree of latitude during the summer.
But can we afford to give people latitude when we're now up to 783 cases in a day?
Well, first of all, there isn't the same link between cases and hospitalisations as there were. But secondly, even if there isn't, this is the Delta variant. I could be wrong and I defer to medical expertise, but I expect there will be another variant. It will, by definition, be more contagious than this one if it replaces this one, because that's why one variant replaces another. So is this an endless cycle that we're going to go through indefinitely?
But because I don't think we can. Maybe we're supposed to wait until the vaccinations are done, and the vaccination programme still needs another 6 to 8 weeks.
Yes, but even at that, we are told by Public Health England that vaccinations reduce the spread of the virus, but they don't stop it. So the virus is still going to spread, and vaccinated people are still going to become ill. So if we're going to take the approach that we've taken up to now, that we can somehow prevent the spread of a respiratory virus, which is, I think, what we have rather optimistically tried to do up to now. In my view, unfortunately, we can't. We're going to have to learn to live with it. And these type of restrictions on society, on individuals, on civil liberties, and on our economy.
Explain more of this discrimination, because other countries are doing this. Other countries are putting in place measures whereby the vaccinated enjoy certain privileges and the unvaccinated have to wait.
Very few. France is doing this, but France is also saying that if you can produce an antigen test, which is cheap, easy and available in all over the place, that they will accept that to allow people to enter. We, of course, because NPHET, for whatever reasons best known to themselves, have taken a set on antigen testing. We're not we're not even allowing people who have a PCR test to go into bars, much less an antigen test. So, yes, France are doing that, but they are also acknowledging that we need to allow people to live their lives to the greatest extent possible. NPHET has never done that from the start. NPHET is an advisory body, but they are being extremely cautious, as is their want. But it's for the government to strike a balance.
These are laws passed in a democracy through our parliament with the consent of the majority of elected representatives that represent the people of Ireland. To vote against it and to rhyme off lots of kind of random reasons around civil liberties and discrimination, and to not
those
back
are pretty important issues. Why did you say it was nonsense, Michael?
She said that this is a democratically elected law. Democracy involves a deliberation, a consideration of the law. You hear the other side, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. You discuss amendments. The government have brought in 5 pillar pieces of legislation since Micheál Martin became Taoiseach, and on each and every occasion they have rammed it through without even taking amendments, without even listening to amendments. Now, democracy is not a tyranny of the majority. Democracy is about deliberation, it's about discussion, and it's about hearing the other side so that people feel represented. The way this government does it is to disregard the voices of the opposition and the people they represent. That is not sustainable in the longer term, because people feel that they're not represented by the lawmaking body, and perhaps regard for the law dissipates as a result. And the third point that Lisa made, with which I would fundamentally disagree, is that this is a choice between leaving the bars closed or not. Indoor dining was available throughout last summer when there were no vaccinations. Now we're suddenly told that we have to ask owners of restaurants to discriminate and to ask people their vaccination status in order to serve them, when they didn't have to do that last summer. That, to me, indicates that we're going backwards, not forwards, and that we're going to have more and more and more restrictions until people are able to decide for themselves what risk they want to take.
Lisa, more restrictions ran through by a government which doesn't even want to have debate on the legislation involved. What's your response to that?
Well, given that Michael just came from Dáil Eireann, where the legislation was debated.
An hour and a half, Lisa, that's a farce.
Did pass through all stages of the legislative process.
In an hour and a half.
As did all of the bills.
In an hour and a half.
I did let you speak, but if you intend on just interrupting somebody because they disagree with you, it's probably not a great way to debate.
Do you think an hour and a half is a...
Is this the type of debate?
Do you think an hour and a half is a sufficient time in which to debate an important issue?
Is this the type of debate that you want, where you interrupt other people when they're making a point that you don't agree with? Every piece of legislation legislation that has passed through has gone through all stages of the legislative process, as is the norm. That has not changed. Some bills there was a degree of urgency because of the emergency situation and the extraordinary circumstances that we are operating in. The legislation tonight was a roadmap and a way to reopen indoor hospitality. My view is that if you voted against it, you were removing that possibility and that roadmap. Thankfully, the vast majority of all members of Dáil Eireann voted for that legislation, and I anticipate the same will happen in Shannon Éireann when the bill passes.
The vast majority, did you say?
The vast majority.
The vast majority. It got through by, I think, was it 6 votes?